Welcome to Running in the 70s, where we interview, meet, and get to know athletes of all kind who were running in the 70s. I'm your host, Matthew Kleinowski. Today in the podcast, we are in Pennsylvania with somebody who spends half his time in China now. We finally caught up with a teammate of mine, state medalist, college All-American, national champion, Olympian, Jim Wooding on the podcast today. Hi, Jim.
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me, buddy. It's a real nice pleasure to see you again after all these years.
Yeah, we'll see each other soon next weekend at your Hall of Fame induction. Let's start by introducing people to you with your origin story as an athlete. Where'd you grow up and what was it like as a kid in sports?
Oh, wow. That was back in Pennsylvania days. I grew up in Pennsylvania. My father was military, so we moved around a lot. But high school was in Lemon Grove High School. And it was a nice school. But as far as track and field goes, it was a little country school. It didn't really have a team. Matter of fact, we weren't even going to have a team one year because there were no coaches left that wanted it. Finally, a history teacher came along by the name of Phil Voturo, and he decided that he'll take it just so we could have a team so we could run. And he knew nothing about track. He was never a runner. He didn't know anything, but he was nice enough to take the team. And we had an old cinder track, a sand field, more like mud dirt, long jump pit. It was just the worst of everything, I guess you could say. I mean, I didn't know any better at the time. I was just a freshman in high school. Yeah, we trained on that. He would go out and say, okay, let's see, I need somebody for the quarter mile. So we'll just go run the quarter mile and see who wins, and we'll make him the quarter miler. Funny thing is, they had the high jump going and they had it set at a certain height. I never high jumped before. I just went over and did the Fosbury flop, and they all got excited. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He says, you just broke the school record. It was like 5'8" or something. It was really bad. It was terrible. That's where I first learned this. What I didn't learn actually in that school, I was just messing around. Yeah, that's where I started at, in a cinder track wearing spikes that were like 3 inches long so you wouldn't slip.
That's just a little bit of insight. You ran the 100, the 400, high jump. You did some other stuff. What about learning to use the blocks?
We didn't really use blocks in high school. They would. Our cinder track was so loose, nothing would hold. So it was really dug a hole like the old guys used to do, just got our feet down there. And once you started going, you'd stop slipping. Like you mentioned there, I went to the States, and I don't know how I made that because nobody knew we didn't have any kind of training. And I would just run the quarter mile until the last turn, and I would start kicking. I always had a kick. So that's pretty much what I've done my whole life. Save a little bit for the end. I caught a lot of people that way. We didn't have any coaching. We didn't have a track. It was just a really terrible start for me, but I lucked out.
Let's talk about at the end of high school, how you decided to go to university.
Okay, right after high school, there was a club that they were running called Shore Athletic Club in New Jersey. There was a guy named Elliot Denman that was in charge. He used to write for the Asbury Park Press. He was actually a walker, and I think he got quite a long ways in his life with walking. But there was a coach on that team that was called Robert Shout. He was the coach that would meet us at the meets and guide us to where we're supposed to go. And I told him what I did in high school, 4 or 5 different events and so on. And he looked at me, he says, you know what? I think I should try you out for a decathlon. I'm like, what's that? I didn't know what the heck it was. And he said, I'll send you to a meet where it's just newcomers, the first time ever that everybody's going to compete in this, and see what you think about it. And I believe them, the meet was up in Penn State. I went up there and I did all my events and plus all the 6 or the 5 that I didn't know. But what was surprising everybody is that I ended up winning the thing. But not only that, I found out I really enjoyed it. It was so nice to do so many different events. You know how it works, 10 events in 2 days. So it was pretty cool. I liked it. And that's where I got the first bug about the decathlon. And right after high school, I joined the Shore Athletic Club. I met a guy there that later would become my teammate. And we didn't like each other at all. I don't know how it happened, but we ended up riding together sometimes to Ursanus College. And we would compete up there, because we would run some of the same events and we were trying to beat each other, and we didn't have any history with each other. We just didn't care for somebody was competing in our own events. So, yeah, we started off on a rough ride there, not really liking each other. But then come to find out, after that summer passed, we were both accepted into IUP. And we weren't too excited about that either. But how I ended up at IUP, I was at home right after high school. My mom came in one day and says, "Hey, son, guess where you're going to spend the next 4 years of your life?"
Wow.
And, and I was like, "What? Where? What do you mean I'm going to where?" She says, "IUP." And I'm like, "What's that?" She says, "Indiana University, Pennsylvania." And I says, "Where's that at?" She says, "It's about 6 hours from here." And I was not happy because at the time I had a high school sweetheart. I was in love. I didn't want to go anywhere. But the next thing you know, my parents are dropping me off in an empty parking lot somewhere at IUP, and I'm watching them drive away. And my dad's military. He was a high-ranking officer. He's go get him, son. He's a tough guy. My mom, she's crying her eyes off. I'm watching them drive away, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do now? I don't know anybody. I have no friends. I don't like this IUP. So I started off really bad. I was just like, I don't even want to be here. My girl's 6 hours away. I didn't have a car because you're not allowed to have a car your freshman year. So I didn't know how I was going to get home. Oh, it was just a mess. As time went on, you meet your roommates, you start making friends. You learn the important things like where's the bathroom and where the cafeteria is so you're not going to starve. So you start to make your way around. But the guy who recruited me behind my back with my mom and dad was Dr. and Coach Lou Sutton. I guess he had a little interest in me, or maybe saw potential. I don't know, but maybe he just needed somebody for numbers. But he recruited me and got me in there, and that's where I started as far as my college career goes. He was a good guy, though. He really looked after me.
What about the start then? In the fall, track's a spring sport. What did you do at the start of?
Oh, in high school, I did 4 different sports. That's back in the day when there wasn't anybody that, nowadays you pick a sport and you stick to it if you want to get anywhere. But back then, everybody did 4 sports or whatever they liked. And I did cross country, I did track and field, I did basketball, I did volleyball, and I played trumpet in the marching and the concert band. So I did a lot of things.
That sounds like the school decathlon, non-track.
Yeah, of multi-eventers, yeah, different sports. When I went to college, I had to decide if I wanted to do really track and field or basketball. It was still up to me, but even though Coach Sutton recruited me for track, but I didn't know if I wanted to do basketball. I decided I was too short. I'm 6'4", but I was center in high school, and I did okay in high school. But when I went to college, those guys are 6'9", 6'10". I could probably out jump them, but their arms are like trees. They could reach around. So I decided I'm only going to do track, and that was it. I did run a little bit with the cross country team from time to time in practice. I know one time we went down, we ran 10 miles, and I did fine. I stayed with the guys. I had some ability there somewhere, at least, that way. But I was a freshman. I was no good at anything, really, no training whatsoever. They got an individual that had some ability, but nobody knew it. And I didn't even know it. So it was an interesting start.
All right, let's name that teammate of yours who was not a friend of yours and eventually became one, because he'll like hearing about that.
Yeah, that was Eric Romley. We didn't like each other when we were competing with each other at Ursanis College. We were always trying to beat each other. And he had a little strange, when he did long jump, he would do the thing with the arms and get all psyched up. And that was just his thing to do. It was fine. But it was a little different for me. I never did anything like that. And I watched him do that in the long jump. And then I went and ran the quarter. But yeah, we rode home together and we talked about what we did. But we weren't really friends at all. And not even all the way up until we found out we were both accepted into IUP. And then we kind of thrown in together.
So let's talk about your drive of competitiveness and how that appears to all of us who aren't in the decathlon. Appears like the decathlon's just this buddy club sometimes, at least by the last event. But how were you driven by competition from high school and then as you started competing in college? What was your personal outlook on that?
When Dave Shout put me in the decathlon, that newcomers meet, I found out I really enjoyed it. But when I went to college, I didn't get a chance to train for it because they recruited me for the sprints, the 4x100, the quarter mile, the high jump, and the 4x400. So I mainly did those 4 events, which is weird because you do the first one, You do a high jump, then you do the middle one, the quarter mile, and then you do the last one, the 4x400. And so I never got a break. So I never got a chance to train because we had Raymore, which is a sprint coach, and he worked our butts off. 4 years, he really killed us, but it was good for us. It brought out my best. I could run a quarter really good. He wasn't really happy with me sometimes though, because I still, even though I pretty much taught myself in high school to save a kick at the end, I wouldn't go all out. And he used to get so mad at me because he came out of Villanova and he was a good sprinter and he knew you go out like crazy and you just hang on and you try to keep the motion going. But I never would do that. I remember one time he threw a stopwatch all the way across the field. He was throwing it at me, but I was on the other side of the track. I went out slow again, or at least it wasn't slow, but I was under a relaxed sprint. And he was so mad at me. But no, I never, ever, not even through college, did I ever go all out in the beginning, the first 300. I always saved a little bit. And I honestly, though, I wish I had done it at least once to see if I could have done it. Who knows what I could have ran if I did it the way he should know what he's doing. So I should have done it at least once, but I was stuck in my ways. I don't know.
Let's talk then. Your freshman year of track, the IUP outdoor track season usually ends before anyone goes to nationals with the state championship, the PSAC. And as a freshman, you won the 440, I think it was then, still running yards.
Yes. That was really neat. I had my way of running the quarter mile. I could always beat you. I always would stay with you. If you're sprinting like crazy, I would stay with you, but I'd be sprinting relaxed. I wouldn't be going all out. So I guess I learned how to stay with people and then beat them at the end. And that's how many of our meets, and there's a lot of our meets came down to the mile relay or the 4x400. And that way got me to the finish line first many times because you'd have guys that would show off, it would take off like crazy. And I just get in behind them and let them break the wind. And then I would save it for the last 100 meters. And it always worked. I just a little bit luck there, I think, too, in all those 4 years. But yeah, I never got beat 4 years in college. It was an amazing thing. I didn't get beat until later in life, which I got beat by the world record holder in the decathlon beat me. But I guess that's okay.
That is okay. All right, let's talk a little bit then about the track team at IUP there. Before we talk about the decathlon success you had there, you were the anchor guy for the 4x4. How did you compare in the 100 and the 400 on the team? Were you the fastest guy?
I wasn't the fastest in the sprints. Ron Steele was the fastest in the 100. I never trained for the 100. I just trained for pretty much the quarter mile. And since I ran two of them each meet, the 400 and the 4x400. So that was my thing. That's what they picked me to do. They had Ron and they had Eric Romley to do the sprints, so they didn't need me over there. That was separated like that for the entire 4 years. I never got a chance to train for the 100, which I would have enjoyed that. I have long legs. Once I get going, I'm pretty good. It worked out good in the quarter mile, though. Not losing for 4 years was really quiet. I remember my senior year. It was my last race and everything, and the big shot putter, I forget his name, he came over to me and says, "Jim, don't worry about it. You got lane 8. Don't worry, you'll be okay." And I'm like, "Get away from me. Get away from me." I was so stressed because I was in lane 8. I wouldn't be able to see anybody. And it was my last race. And I wanted to win 4 years in a row. Fortunately, I did. But it was really scary being in the 8th lane. I don't know how I drew that. I don't know what was going on there. But I'd never forget that. I hollered at the poor guy. He was trying to make me feel better. But I snapped at him.
During that period, there were coming some artificial track surfaces. One of them, Shippensburg, had a nice artificial track. It was fast. And IUP during that period had some great weight men in the javelin, especially as the javelin U of the small colleges. When did you do your next decathlon, and how did you eventually get to having time to train for those extra events?
It wasn't easy. I honestly didn't train for the decathlon until after the season was over. We'd have our state meet, and then we'd have a few weeks before nationals where I would get to go to one meet to qualify, and I honestly didn't get to train at all. Honestly, I never trained for the javelin or the pole vault. You never saw me do those the 4 years I was there. Never. So it was really tough trying to go and compete with those guys that are actually training for it. But IUP recruited me for the quarter mile and the sprints and the high jump. That's what I did all 4 years. I got my little 2 to 3 weeks window every year. I would get to go home and I would train by myself in the summertime. I was training at Westchester University by myself in the summertime. And I had this old rinky dinky, I forget what year Ford it was. It was different colors. It was a terrible looking car. I don't know if you remember Action News in Philadelphia. They came out to interview me, and they saw my car, and they filmed my car and everything, and they were talking about the future. If this guy can win the Olympics, he might get a better car. And oh my gosh, but yeah, I would train by myself in the summertime at Westchester, and I would practice the other events, but I had no coach. Everything was bad for me, was wrong for me. In high school, I had no coach, or not really a track. Now in IUP, they recruited me. When I got there, he said, "Oh, we're going to have a brand new all-weather track. They're going to put it in this summer." I get there, and it's this asphalt track. And I heard that they used the money they had some kind of a big storm that took some roofs off of some buildings, and they had to put it towards that instead. So for an entire 4 years, we ran on an asphalt track. Now that might not sound too bad, but if you ever train on a track, especially sprint works out like we were doing, how fast you can go, it kills me. So what happened is those 4 years, even after the first year, I got shin splints so bad that if I didn't take aspirin, I had to take 3 aspirin before practice so I could practice. Otherwise, I couldn't even run. My shins hurt so bad. And that was an entire 4 years that I trained. I had to take my aspirin. And the funny thing after that is after college, for the next 7 I trained, I still had to take my aspirin. My shin splints were ruined from that asphalt. Coach Sutton recruited me saying, "Oh, we're going to have an all-weather track," and that was exciting for me because I ran on a cinder track for 4 years in high school, and that would have been like night and day for me. But we had that asphalt track that was terrible.
During that period, the cross country team was in that period where everybody thinks we've got to hit 100 miles a week. So there were people that would get injuries from overuse and things. What about for a sprinter, apart from just shin splints and constant pain? Any other injuries during that 4 years for you?
No, I was pretty lucky in college. I always warmed up. We always stretched. So they did us right by teaching us what we should do to get ready. And Raymore was really good on, you actually do 3 or 4 sprints before you even compete. Now that sounds like crazy. Like, why would you exert some energy doing 4 sprints right before you run? That was the reason we never got hurt. You never seen any of us pull muscle. And I continued that on all throughout my whole career. I would do those sprints for the quarter. You want to have every ounce of energy you have for a quarter mile because it takes everything out of you. If you actually run the quarter mile right, you're going to almost feel like collapsing and getting sick and everything if you do it right. And that's every single time you run. So it gets a little old. But yeah, that was tough. But that was good that he did that. That's why we never had injuries. He was a good enough coach to know that. And I learned from that. So
interesting. Let's talk about the training you did. I know it changed after you left university. We talked about this, but weight training as a sprinter before the end of the season, concentration on decathlon. Any weight training?
We did do some weight training there. Royden Grove was the weight coach, but I didn't really do much weight training at all, honestly. I didn't know anything about it. He wouldn't give you a program to do specifically for yourself. So I didn't really know what to do. I didn't want to do heavy weights or I didn't want to do light weights. I wasn't sure where I should go. So actually, I didn't know about weightlifting in IUP. I didn't really start that until after college, and I met other athletes that were training. After college, I went down to University of Penn and I trained there. So that was where everything changed as far as weightlifting goes and training, actually finally getting to train for my event.
Let's just finish up then with your decathlon success at IUP. What all did you accomplish there?
Again, I only had 2 or 3 weeks to train for the decathlon. And what I learned for the other events was what I taught myself in the summertime when I went home. So I never got a chance to really train for it because I was recruited for the quarter mile. That's the number one thing in high jump. I was an All-American in high jump once or twice. And so I guess that was a good choice. But the decathlon was what I really liked to do because I was never going to be the very fastest, never the very strongest, never the distance the best. So decathlon seemed to be a good fit for me because I was good in several events. And because of Ray Moore's workouts, I learned a good ethics on how to train. And I did that in all my events. I tried to do as close as possible when I trained, even by myself, to copy the event that I was going to do. After IUP, Coach Ray Moore, he knew a coach, the pin relays. He ran the pin relays for years. Coach Tuppenny, I think it's Jim Company. And he was well known down there. That was like a mini Olympics. He used to be at Villanova, and that's when Robert Raymore was down there competing. So he called up Tup and he says, "Hey, I got a guy that wants to train for the decathlon for the next, just train for it and see how he can do. And would you mind him coming down and training with your team?" They all said yes. And so I would teach school till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Then I'd hop in my car and drive down Schuylkill Expressway for an hour. And that is the nightmare of the road of the world. I would get down there about 4:30 or so. I would start practice and they would let me train with the other decathletes. And it was good because we were helping each other. But there was our coach down there. His name was, let me put it this way, a guy that won the Olympics is Bob Mathias, right? The guy that came in second was a guy named Irv Munsheim, and he was our coach. So I had a really good training coach for the decathlon for the first time. We started doing everything he said, and I was down there for probably good 6-7 years going down there. It was a horrible. I would train down there in the wintertime. I couldn't afford to go to the West Coast or to Florida to train. I remember in the wintertime I'd be running on Franklin Field in University of Pennsylvania and Philadelphia. I'd have to wear pin spikes so I wouldn't slip on the ice. I had long johns, sweatpants, gloves, hats, everything to try to keep warm enough to do sprint workouts. Try to do Ray Moore's workouts. It just wasn't very good. So I was there for a good 7 years, but I never could get up in the top 10 of the decathletes. I was just always behind. In 1980, we had the Olympic trials in Eugene, of course. So I trained towards that. I qualified and I went down there, but I injured myself in the pole vault before I went down there. I tried to compete, but I couldn't. And I went to a doctor, and ironically, this guy they nicknamed him God. That's how good he was. He took a look at me into x-rays and everything. And he came out and said, "Jim, I'm afraid your athletic career is over." He says, "You can't run. You can never run again." That was in 1980, right? Right after the Olympic trials. I was really upset. And I met a chiropractor one time. I don't know, one of the functions I was at. He said, "Jim, I'll send you some exercises for where you injured your back." And he says, "I think they'll help you." I started doing those and I started coming back. And the rest of the story, I trained for 4 more years. And then I made the 1984 Olympics.
Let's go through then just the end of college. You were All-American in the high jump, decathlon,
and the 4x400
and the relay. What about that relay team? What was that like for you? You were an individual athlete, you were a multi-sport athlete, you working, coaching on your own, and then you had this great team whose record I think still stands.
We had some good coaches and we had some really good athletes too, because they brought out our best. They worked it out of us. Ed Fry was amazing for the distance. And Raymore was great for sprints. We had some really good coaches, but the athletes they had too were some really good guys that came up, and Ed Fry brought out your best, and so did Raymore. If you didn't, you died. They really trained you. So we broke a lot of records. We had quite a few All-Americans. So I just wanted to add that little part. They had some great athletes to work with too, even though we came there with not many skills that we've shown before. But yeah, that my relay team, we started out, nobody knew you. It was all just training, hard training. And every practice, you had to run faster and faster. And it was just, Raymore had everything documented. And we started getting where we started to be competitive. Then it started getting fun. Then we started working on the handoffs and really getting them down. And we were an All-American team. And we finally made it one time. It was really a great thing to be there. And it was great to see the improvements from all of us. We all helped each other. That was what was nice about IEP. The team really cheered for everybody. We were all one big team, which was really a nice feeling.
Post-graduation, it's the middle of the 70s. There's no money. There's nobody signing you up. Did you have any sponsorship? And what was your outlook? You were working, you were teaching and saying, okay, I'm going to give this a go. What was it like?
I continued teaching, but I knew I just couldn't break out of the top 10. I just couldn't get anywhere. I was training on the East Coast in the wintertime. It was just not good. We had an indoor bubble where we ran, but it wasn't the best either. I decided I wanted to go to Florida to train. And I used to go down there for Florida relays. And I met a coach down there named Mike Bozeman. He said, if I could get down there for at least 6 weeks, he could give me a full training workout before the Olympics, get me in shape and help me out with some of my events. Backing up. How did I get there? I had no money. I didn't have a coach either. Well, I did. I'm sorry. I went to pin relays down there for 7 years under Irv Munshine. But going to Florida relays, I didn't have any money. So I started doing some speaking engagements. They would invite me out and I would do a nice speech about what I'm doing and what I'm trying to accomplish. And the Lions Club and several service organizations started giving me some money if I come out and speak. And oh, this next part is hard. Pardon me.
No, that's
Can you
good.
cut? Can you cut some of this out?
No, yeah, it's obviously emotional and important to you. Take your time.
Thanks. My parents had a big party every year for Christmas. All of our relatives came, and I went down there, and I was the last person there. I was really upset with my wife. I said, "I thought you said it was started at this time. Why are we so late?" So I went in there, and we're talking. And everybody's there already, and my mom comes out with a Christmas tree, $100 bills all over it,
Wow.
checks from everybody, so that I could train in Florida for 6 weeks. So, yeah,
It's a great moment.
yeah. So now I'm not competing for myself anymore. I'm competing for family and friends and service organizations and everybody. They all came through for me, and I went down there and trained, and that made the difference.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. I don't know how accurate my understanding is. In 1980, with the boycott, the top couple U.S. decathletes said, "We're done." Some of them were a little bit in the same boat as you, and they said, "We can't do this for 4 more years." Who knows?
Yeah, I felt sorry for those guys. The guy who was number one for the United States at that time was Kaufman. It was his last chance. He couldn't hang around for another 4 years. He was at his peak. You can only go so long. I made the Olympics when I was 30, and I was actually thinking of going for another 4 years if I could get the sponsors. Now, back then, I had the sponsors coming in. Bell Telephone was going to give me a sponsorship. Mako Auto Body was going to do sponsorship for me. But back then, the Athletics Congress just came in and they told them that they had to give them a lot of money in order to sponsor me. So they all dropped me. So I was done at 1980 because I had 4 personal records in 1980. There was no sign that I was slowing down. The quarter mile was, I was really proud of myself. And in the quarter mile, for example, the guy that beat me, that's the funny part. The guy who was previously a world record holder, Jürgen Hinkson from West Germany. We were down at California training 6 weeks before the Olympics. And he was watching me start out at blocks, and knew that I was running a quarter mile, and he came over and he wanted to try to help me. And I didn't say nothing. Like, I listened and I was polite. And he was already
It's like, I've done this before. I've had a little bit of success in this.
I may be only good in one event compared to him. He was a world record holder, but picking on me on my only event, I know. He gave me some pointers, and I thanked him. At the Olympics, we said good luck to each other, and we were running the quarter mile, and Daley Thompson, which was the record holder from England, it's funny about this guy. He's a black guy. He doesn't go, "What's happening, bro?" He goes, "Jolly good, old boy." So it's a little different. And he was the one that was the world record holder in the decathlon, and he won the quarter mile in 46 something. But I beat Jürgen Hinks, and I beat him because I saved a little. Again, I knew Raymore. I was waiting for that stopwatch to fly by my head from Raymore because I did it again at the Olympics. I saved a little bit because I'm smart in a quarter mile. I know what I'm doing. If you ever been to Penn State, the curves are short and the straightaways are very long from corner to corner. And that's the same way the Olympics were at the Los Angeles Coliseum. And so I waited to the curve when I came out of the curve, and I know that they're feeling right then and there were, "Oh my gosh, the finish line is so far away. I'm not going to make that." So, and I saved something. So I started kicking. I had over 120 meters, 130 meters to go. I passed Jürgen Hinkson. I could hear. And the funny thing back then was, this is interesting. The guy that was commentating for Olympics was O.J. Simpson.
Oh boy.
And I remember watching the videos from this day. He was talking about me, and here comes Jim Woody from out of nowhere, because I was in like 5th or 6th place, and then I kicked. But I saved it because I knew the runway was the last straightaway was so long. That's where they would die. And it worked out for me. I ran 47.6. So that was my best. That was my personal record in the Olympics. So I wasn't slowing down. I was actually probably learning a little bit more. So it was.
Well, you had a very good first day, at least a couple events. Your 100 meters over 1,000 points, I think.
in decathlon, it's a big deal to try to score 8,000 points. That's like the elites of the elites. Once you get to 8,000, you're in that group, a very top 1%. I'd only done it one other time. Was I went to Florida Relays, and I was competing against the number one competitor from Canada, Dave Steen. He and I were going at it, and it came down, and I always hate it. Why does everything come down to the last event? I'll never know. But he was a skinny guy. He could run 1,500 meters all day long. And I'm 225-pound guy. I got to stay within, I forget, a couple seconds to beat him. All right. So the gun went off, and I'm scared to death. I don't know how I'm going to stay with this guy because he could just run all day. So I got with him, and then it started hitting me. My weight started getting to me, and I started slowing down. Even after the second lap, I'm like, oh, I can't keep this pace going. So I started dropping off. Now, I was listening to a music, Rocky 3. I was listening to it before I started, and I started thinking of that. Eye of the Tiger, come on, don't. And all of a sudden, I'm already 30 meters behind him or something. I'm falling behind. And on the third lap, I decided I'm going to go after this guy. I don't care. And I sprinted up and got right on his butt. I remember seeing the straightaway and coming down to the finish line. I had no idea how I was going to make it there. My arms were dead. My legs were dead. I had nothing left. I was trying to stay with him my very best. If he had a kick, it would have ran away. But he didn't evidently either, because we were running 4:17. And I stayed with him all the way. And as soon as I crossed the finish line, I fell. Both my arms cramped at the same time, and I dropped. I had given it every ounce of strength I had. That's when my mind, the eye of the tiger, I just hung in there. It was the hardest race I've ever ran in my life. You know what? They gave him the credit for being the first 8,000 decathlete in the Florida Relays, even though I had won. But I don't know if I might still have the record down there, because you just don't go down to Florida Relays and score 8,000 points. It was perfect conditions for me and him. We were at our peaks, and he was from Canada, using it just like I was. And we were competing against each other the whole way. We were just a few points away from each other. And of course, he was in the Olympics again. I met him there again. As a matter of fact, in the quarter mile, I remember him coming around me. He was beating me around the curve. And I was, go ahead. I'm relaxing. I'm still here. And then as soon as the straightaway hit, I flew. And I just remember seeing him. He was on the outside of me, and he was passing me. And it's not good to be passed. So not when you're just running a quarter mile.
Yeah, you weren't used to it either. Yeah. You won a couple national championships in the decathlon, the AAU national championships. How competitive were those?
For me to win, I ran on being really good in the quarter mile and the 100 and the high jump. I had a lot of points in those events, so that really helped. And the other events, practicing in the summertime like I did, I had the speed. I may not have been the best technician in the world, and throwing the discus and the shot put, anybody can throw that. And so I hung with the rest of the guys. And so my events kept me up there. And of course, in the last event, 1,500 meters. But back then in college, I was skinnier and lighter. When I went to IUP, I was 175 pounds. And when I competed in the Olympics, I was 225. 50 extra pounds is a big difference, but it was all muscle and all training, and I'd done everything right for the decathlon now. It was strictly for a shot. I mean, you had to get strong and fast and distance, and you had to do it all. So I was doing proper training finally. Mike Bozeman, I give a lot of credit to, man. He got me down to Florida Relays and all those people that helped me. And that's really a tough thing for me to talk about, but that got me there and helped me to get over the top 10, to get in that top 3 like I needed to get into Olympic trials. And that was the greatest feeling in the world. So.
That was real amateur athletics then.
Okay,
like you said, self-funding, and you're very gracious about all the people that helped you, and you're humble about it. But the decathlon, to those of us that are not in it, it looks like a fraternity of people who have the shared experience. What's it really like at the highest levels?
You're funny you say that. We come out on the track and we hope that lightning strikes our competitors. We want to get rid of them. We're not friends. We would say hi, but we're in our own separate little world, thinking about what we're going to do and how we can score these points on the next guy. And maybe I can get a little better here, and maybe he'll mess up. And you're not friends at all. And then when you get thrown into the Olympics, all of a sudden you're on the same team and you're supposed to be together. It doesn't work out that way. So you're still, I remember at the Olympics, all I had to do is beat John Christ, and I would have come in sixth instead of seventh, but I didn't. I didn't go after him because I'm passing another USA guy to still have sixth and seventh place. So I didn't do that. So that was the difference in the Olympics. But otherwise, I'd have ran after him too.
What about the Olympic trials? You finished third in the Olympic trials, and then what happened with you training, support, and the athletics officials? How'd you interact with them from Olympic trials onward?
Once you make it, once you make the team and they take care of you. We went to California for 6 weeks prior to the Olympics and we trained there. We got used to the track, all the conditions. It was perfect the way that worked out. And I met the coach down at Penn Relays. He was helping me, or Munshine. He was knowing what he was doing. Then I went to Florida and trained for the 6 weeks right up prior to the Olympic trials, which is really the reason I finally got some good training in to get to my peak, because I wasn't going to do that down at the University of Pennsylvania. It just, the weather wasn't good enough, and I needed to get a little bit of that extra attention and good weather with the coach, a different coach, and maybe bring something new to the game to me. So it was good. It's funny. One time I was training with Mike Bozeman and I couldn't finish practice. I was like, I don't know what's wrong, coach. I can't do this. I don't have any energy. And he looked at me and says, Jim, what are you eating? What are you doing? Well, I said, I cut out ice cream and anything that's bad for you. I cut out. He said, Jim, my God, you're doing 3 workouts a day. You're working out in the morning, you're working out in the afternoon, and then you're lifting at night. He says, put the ice cream back in your diet. For God's sakes, you got to have some calories to burn. So I did that, and I was just fine from then on out. But it's funny. It's when you train that hard and all day long, you need, even if they're bad calories, you need it for energy. I learned something then. Of course, now I don't live that way now. Eating ice cream to get calories, it's not good. But back
Well,
then, you burn them all up.
let's talk across the sport. We don't have to start talking reality TV, but through the years, the decathletes are known as the best athletes. Back when they used to have the Wheaties box, we've had heroes through American history of Olympic decathlete champions. And you've had some showboaters. Daley Thompson he liked attention on there.
Absolutely.
And you talked about Romley, who was a showboat in high school. And not everybody likes that stuff. And of course, Bruce Jenner was an American hero. His life changed dramatically since then. But what about you're interacting with those other people, maybe away from the competitions or after the competitions? It's got to be a big mix of personalities of people who have to train and, as you said, leave everything on the track for 2 days.
Yeah, I'm a friendly person. I can talk to anybody. But when I'm at the competitions, when I'm with the other decathletes, we might say good job or something, but we really don't mean it. We want to beat you. We want you to mess up. We want you to no height, or we want you to sprain an ankle. It's terrible to say that, but we're actually enemies on the track. We're not friendly. We want to beat you. So it's hard. I'm not a fake. I won't go, hey, how you doing, Chris? I just can't do that. I'm exactly what I am. I tell you, I feel. My heart's on my shoulders. So I'm always me. So I didn't play the game. I can't do politics. That was probably my problem throughout my life, because I would tell the boss, just because you're my boss doesn't mean you're right. So I had to learn, how to be a politician, how to say the right things, and because I always said what I thought, and that got me in trouble a few times. But how you learn as you're growing up, and I did a lot of growing up at IUP. Oh my gosh, and then training by myself. It's amazing I even got as far as I did, because I didn't have anything going for me at all. I wished I had a great coach. I was training on the West Coast and just not worrying about working and trying to support an apartment or a house and all that stuff that goes with it. I did really well for being a part-time athlete. That's the only downfall I have in my competitions, that I never really got to go completely all out with the best conditions and the best coaches and the best training. So I would have liked to. I'd love to. I thought I was going to do it after the 1984 Olympics. I actually thought I was going to go for another 4 years when I started getting those sponsors, but that was taken out from under me real quick. So that was it. And at the time, my wife at that time, I remember her and her family, they're like looking at me. I'm training every day. I'm going down. If I'm training by myself, they're like, what is this guy doing? I'm going to be 30 years old. And I couldn't work full time because I had to take some days off competition, or I had to go here for a clinic or there. I was trying to do as much as I could, learn as much as I could. And their response to me was, Jim, you're going to be 30 years old. When are you going to get a job? Like, when are you going to grow up? And that was at the time where it was the most important part. Last year of my life, this is everything. I'm on the line for 7 years of training, and you wouldn't hit me with that. So I had everything going against me. So that's why I really appreciate what everybody did to me to help me get there, even just to go down to Florida for 6 weeks. That paid for food, that paid. Bozeman was really great to let me move in with one of his athletes in one of their apartments and stuff. And but yeah, I had a lot of people helping me. So it wasn't just me competing. I was representing a lot of people.
You're very gracious about all this. And I remember with the team before I got hurt, you're the same guy from 1976 that I knew. You're just the same. You smile, you laugh a lot, you appreciate everybody. But it's good to hear about the cutthroat driven competition that it takes, because you wouldn't accomplish what you did if you weren't focused, mindset, I'm going to give everything I got. How do you let go of that? What happens when it all ends?
It's funny because when I'm competing, you're worried about yourself and doing everything right for yourself. You don't have to worry about anybody else, other athletes or nothing. You want to do your best. I did come back to IUP after the Olympics, and I coached there for 4 years. And at that time, it was a failing track team. It was really terrible. And I recruited like crazy. It was pretty easy for me to recruit. Listen, I just came out of the Olympics. I know what I'm doing. Please come here. But I got a lot of good guys and girls. In 4 years, we had 12 All-Americans. I remember the football team not too happy about that because our budget was, what was it, $35,000 a year, and theirs was $350-something thousand. And I had more All-Americans, and there was a little tension there sometimes, but I was really proud of what I did. But my point was being that when you have a whole team you're coaching, you're not only coaching for yourself anymore. Every time one of the athletes was competing, I'm throwing a leg up, I'm throwing my head, I'm competing every time they're jumping. Then I'm over here, come on, throw that. By the end of the track meet, I was so exhausted. I felt like I did a decathlon because your energy is on every event with every athlete, and it just tires you out. It's really because I was teaching them everything they knew. I said, when they came to college, I said, do me a favor, whatever you learned in high school, I want you to forget it. This is what we're going to do. And I completely broke them down and started from scratch on what the proper technique was in shot put and discus. And those guys, at first, they weren't sure about me because when you change your technique, your performance goes down. They weren't too happy at first. They're like not showing progress. But then after a few months, all of a sudden they start really starting to put it out there. They start breaking their own records. They start breaking the school records. They were so high on me by the time I was there for a while, and they were doing what I said, and it was paying off. I was really happy and a lot of success in those 4 years. So I was really happy about it. Giving back to some athletes. I had all this knowledge and I actually shared it. So it was really nice. Right after coming out of the Olympics, I was able to do that. So.
Yeah, we take this little school in Western Pennsylvania and they have an Olympian as the decathlon coach. That's kind of a special pocket. You did coach someone to exceed your college scoring, right?
Yes, I did. I coached Dave Medvitz. He was a crazy guy, boy, but he would work out hard. He made me proud there. He would run hard. But he listened to me. Well, he had respect for me. I've already been there, so it was easy to sell when you're coaching, when you're coming off something like that. And he listened to everything I said, and it paid off. He broke my own record, so I coached really good. I wished I had that coach when I was there, because I would have felt that he would have never touched my record if I had a good coach. But it was nice to give back and see that what I taught somebody else could actually do well too. So I've had some tough times. I've always seen I was on the East Coast. Nobody ever picked me to make the team. I was always last on everything. I paid my own way, or I tried to pay my own way, and people helped me pay. It was a long, hard struggle. But when I made the Olympics, it was the greatest thing in the world. That was the best thing in my life until, of course, my girls were born. It changes after that, of course.
Different perspective. Yeah, I know everybody who knew you, we all got to watch in our own time zones the 84 Olympics, and they did a pretty good job of covering the decathlon. The events were on TV, the 1500 meters, the last event. It was on prime time. It was on the TV for everybody to watch. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was funny because the world record holder, he was going to break the world record. He was going to do it. And he was in the 1500 meters, Daley Thompson from England. And it just happened to be that I got behind him and was running behind him because in order to come in where I was, the guy that was behind me had to beat me by 5 seconds. I had a guy telling me how far behind he was, so I wasn't worried. So I hopped on behind Daley Thompson. I was just jogging behind him. All the TV coverage was on him. They weren't looking at me, but I was with him, so I was on TV. So it was really
Right.
good coverage for me. I wasn't going to win. For me, coming in seventh in the world is the greatest thing in the world for a part-time athlete. It was just great. But I had a lot of TV coverage because I was running with him for a lap or two, and they were watching him to see if he was going to break the record. And here I was, right there. So I ended up going around him finally because he was going too slow. I would say I sprinted the last 220 meters and came in right in behind John Christ, which if I beat him, I would have come in sixth instead of seventh. But I wasn't after him. I was just worried I didn't want anybody past me. So.
Were you able to attend then the opening ceremonies, the closing ceremonies of those games?
Oh, that was the greatest feeling in the world. They hit us in a tunnel. Do you remember? There's a big tunnel at
Right.
the end of yeah, and we were all in there. And then when they would call the USA, we'd come out with a flag. Well, the rule was you're supposed to go around the track once and then jump on the infield. But we were such a large team. I was pretty much in the front. And when I went around, they were still coming out of the tunnel. So I snuck back in and I went around again. And we were jumping up. And that's when the United States was very patriotic. USA, USA. And it was, oh my gosh, I get goosebumps and everything. So much fun. I made it. They can never take that away from me. I made it.
No, it's fantastic. It was just an impressive. Everybody that reflects on it is just Jim Wooding, seventh in the Olympics from our school. It makes everybody from IUP proud. I want to just go to a little bit of a dark topic in sports and then talk again about the upcoming Hall of Fame. Drug use and performance enhancing drugs were known in the sport. I've never heard of it come up in the decathlon. It was a sprinter thing. Now it's a distance thing. What were you guys aware of then?
Let me tell you about the drugs. All right. I had gotten to a point in the last 4 years where I knew everybody else was using drugs and they were doing testosterone and decadurabolum and all this stuff. Even the guy I was training with was doing it. He would go down to Mexico, buy it, come out and bring it back. Now, I didn't do it. But I got to the point where my dad was saying, I'm at a disadvantage, Dad. I said, what am I going to do? Some of these guys are beating me now that never beat me before, and now they're beating me. And and my mom, I want you natural. I don't want you taking drugs. But I gotten to the point where my father was military, right? A high-ranking officer, and he took me to his doctor. And we were going to do steroids because everyone else is doing it, and I'm losing. I'm not going to even come close. So I was going to do it. They were going to set up a whole regimen of it was going to be under a doctor's care. But what happened at the Pan Am Games, a couple years before the Olympics, the drug test only could test back to 6 weeks. And I'm not taking anything from Bruce Jenner, but I know about those guys back then, and they all did. I'm sorry, I don't care who they are. And so they could take it all the way up till 6 weeks before the Olympics. They got all the benefits from an entire year of training, and they could kick butt when the Olympics rolled around. Now, when they came out at the Pan Am Games and said, all right, we got a new test now for steroids and all these drug tests, it tests back to 6 months. Were you seeing guys drop out of the Pan Games? There were so many hamstring pulls and everything. They didn't want to get tested. They did not want to get tested because and that, honest to God, is the truth why I made it. Because my hard work and training, even though it may not have been the best, I didn't have to take drugs. I was getting ready to do it. But that saved my life and took that away from all those other guys who were taking it. And that was that was 2 years before the Olympics. They didn't take drugs anymore. They couldn't do it. The test goes back 6 months. You would lose everything by 6 months when the Olympics showed up. So it wouldn't help them. So that's one of the reasons I made it and I was natural. And that's the other thing. I don't know why they were picking on me. Why only test the first and second and third place guys? They tested me at the Olympic trials. I was there for 2 hours trying to pee after you've been in Los Angeles for 8 hours, 2 days in a row, completely dehydrated. There's no pee. I'm drinking like crazy. And one of the guys, he was acting all big. I can go pee. He went and peed. He came back carrying a cup with this much in it, just a little bit. We just belittled him to death. You know what? So we were never going to go until we could fill up that cup. So we were drinking, not Pepsi, but water and everything we could find to drink. And I was there for 2 hours until I could finally pee. And my parents were waiting on me. So I was like, they tested me at the trials and they tested me at the Olympics. And I didn't think that was fair because I didn't win one of the medals. I was like, give me a break here. Why are you picking on me? Because nobody picked me. I was like the underdog for sure. So.
Yeah. We are going to see you this weekend at IUP for the IUP Sports Hall of Fame. It's long overdue, but you are getting inducted as an IUP athlete. How do you feel about that?
I think that's a great honor. They're going to ask me a question that I have to answer. So I'm going to find out exactly what that's going to be. But many things that happen at IUP you use in your whole life. It's not going to be that hard to connect the dots. I became a teacher. I taught my entire life. I had some good people that helped coach me. We had some good coaches at IUP, great coaches. And we made some great friends because your teammates are all your friends because you're always out there training with them. You have some lifelong friends. And I'm going to get to see quite a few of those guys hopefully this weekend at the Hall of Fame, which is I'm really looking forward to it. It's funny because I used to do speaking engagements a long time ago. That was a fun thing I used to do. There was one time when I was at IUP and they wanted me to come all the way down to Philadelphia to give a speech at all the presidents of all the Fidelity banks, all the pinstripe guys, all these.
Right.
And I said, I don't know. It's a 6-hour drive. He said, we'll give you $1,000. And I'm like, oh, $1,000. Okay, I'll be there. And he's talking to me. He says, hey, Jim, you know who we had last year? And I said, no, who'd you have last year? He said, Dick Vermeil. I'm like, oh. I said, I'm not in that category. I have a nice talk. And he said, I'll just come down and do your best. So I drove the 6 hours, and it was first class. They had 2 huge screens. I'm walking down the center of the stadium, coming down to the stage. They're playing the Olympic song, and they're showing me doing events. Oh, it was wonderful. It was just great. But I did like a 50-minute speech. It was great. They gave me a standing ovation. I went home for a while. And this guy, Dick Pond, was the one that recruited me to come down and speak. He called me up. He said, Jim, you know what? I want to tell you something. You were better than Dick Vermeil. Yours is from the heart. We can all relate to you. I'm going to send you another $500. I was in my glory, buddy. I was just so happy. So I always ended up my speeches by saying, you may not know this, but you didn't have to really pay me anything to get me here because I really love doing this because it helps me keep my Olympic flame burning a little bit longer. That's how I feel about when I get to talk. But at the Hall of Fame, I only get to talk 2 or 3 minutes. They have a limit. They're going to ask you a question, you answer it and get off. So, I might stretch it a little bit, but not much.
It's not surprising that you're better than Dick Vermeil. You were better than just about everybody at everything you ever did. You give back. You're still teaching this week. You're genuine, and like I said, you're just the same guy 50 years later. So it's really great nice to see.
Matt. It's very nice, Matt. Thank you very much. I like being happy, and life's the way you make it. I've had a lot of trouble in my life. Losing my wife was the worst, but you keep going. You never get over that. Those guys that say, "Oh, you'll get over it in time," they're full of BS. They don't know what they're talking about. You never get over it. But you can't. There's an old saying: I never met a winner yet that wasn't knocked down several times before he got up and became a winner. Everybody gets hard knocks. Everybody. So you just can't let it be what dominates you. You just can't sit back. Oh, I feel so bad. And I did for a while. When my wife died, I was a zombie for 6 months. I'll be honest with you. But I came back, and now I'm enjoying life again, going to China. I've been there 9 times now, and the culture is beautiful in China. I love going over there. And so my life's good. My kids are grown. I got 3 grandkids now. I'm really happy. And this weekend, I get to see all my old pals. So that's going to be really nice.
It's going to be really nice for all of us. I'll get this out so people can hear it. It's just the best news to hear that you're happy. You made a lot of other people happy, and it's really great spending time with you now, Jim.
Oh, man. No, I really appreciate this. It keeps me remembering what I've forgotten a lot of these guys' names, and you help me bring them all back again. So it's going to stay with me a little longer now. Thank you very much, Matt.
All right. Well, you're going to do a lot of handshaking this weekend. I look forward to seeing you again.
Oh, I'll be happy. Very happy to do that. Thank you very much for having me, Matt. This has been a great time for me. Thanks.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed another episode. Do you have someone you'd like to hear interviewed on the podcast? You can leave a comment on the YouTube channel or on the website, running70s.com. That's running70s.com. Let me know what you think of the episodes and anyone, including yourself, you'd like to hear interviewed. I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.